Don't you wish that your weekend was longer than just 2 days? Well, if so, then you're in luck, because here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio, our weekend begins on Wednesday. Yes, you heard that right. Our weekend kicks off every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, with DarkWolf's Den, starring yours truly, Jerry the Dark Wolf. But that's where the fun has only just begun. Make sure you come back every Thursday through Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, for the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show, starring AJ the Rippin' Rabbit. He dives into the archives of vocal legend Art Bell and brings those stories up to date. So make sure that you spend your extended weekends with the Animals Radio, Jerry the Dark Wolf and AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, every Wednesday through Sunday, right here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
Rippin' Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Rippin' Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson with Reality Shifters and the International Mandela Effect Conference, and you're now listening to DarkWolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
Now the ultimate power in the universe.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light, and you're now listening to DarkWolf's Den.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. Don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret mountain cave, hidden deep within the Idaho wilderness, this is the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome to the kickoff of the weekend right here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio. That's right, that means it's another episode of the DarkWolf's Den Show. It is Wednesday, September 30th, 2020, and tonight we're going to talk about prophecy. From biblical prophecy to Revelation, even Nostradamus and somebody you may not have heard of called Baba Vanga. We've got a whole lot to cover in a short time to get there, ladies and gentlemen, so curl up, grab a nice warm drink, a nice warm blanket, and enjoy next to the campfire as we discuss prophecy right here on the DarkWolf's Den Show. But first, today in history. If you guys remember our episodes last week, one of the Todays in History had to do with the Jetsons, which makes this Today in History even more fitting. On this day in 1960, the Flintstones, the first animated sitcom created by Hanna-Barbera, premieres on ABC in the U.S. And I gotta say, that was one of my favorites growing up. I had a couple, but that was definitely up there on the list. And that is this week's Today in Oh man, didn't you guys love the Flintstones, right? And the Jetsons and the Smurfs? God, I love the Smurfs. That was one of my all-time favorites. And there was one I used to watch called Brave Star too. That's not really a popular one. Some people may have heard of it. But speaking of cartoons, The Simpsons has been known to predict a lot of things that are going to happen in the future. Whether on purpose or not, that's still yet to be determined. But would that prediction, that type of prediction, can be considered a prophecy? Or maybe even a self-fulfilling prophecy? We'll get into that later. But what would be considered prophecy? Would a psychic be considered prophet? Right? Would that anything a psychic says be considered prophecy in that case, right? Is that how it would go, or is it different? Well, according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, it has a definition for prophecy. A prophecy is, actually it has 3 definitions. One would be an inspired utterance of a prophet. That really doesn't tell us much. 2 would be the function or vocation of a prophet, specifically the inspired declaration of divine will and purpose. And 3 would be a prediction of something to come. Well, psychics predict something to come all the time, right? So, according to that definition, would that not make them a prophet, right? Is that just not another word for it? Well, although that can be debated elsewhere, we're here to debate prophecy. And prophecy is considered by Christians to be one of the 9 gifts of God. So everybody has a gift. They're all different types of gifts, but we all have a gift.
The 9 gifts of the Spirit. 1. The word of wisdom. 2. The word of knowledge. 3. Gift of faith. 4. Gifts of healing. 5. Working of miracles. 6. Prophecy. 7. Discerning of spirits. 8. Tongues. 9. Interpretation of tongues. These are the 9 gifts of the Spirit.
And of course, the one that we are interested in is number 6, because of course it would be number 6 on the list, wouldn't it? But the one that we're interested in tonight is number 6, or prophecy. That's right. So we know what prophecy is so far, but how does a Christian define the gift of prophecy?
The gift of prophecy, here we go. This is going to be deep. You ready? You should write this down.
And does everybody have their Darkwolf's Den themed notepad ready? I'm just kidding. Any notepad will work.
It's a gift.
Did you catch that?
It's a gift.
So it is a gift, not a GIF, those little things online that are animated, but a gift, something that is given, correct?
And the Greek word gift there means a favor which is received without any merit of its own.
To untangle that word salad there, it simply means it's free. It's given freely.
In other words, you don't get the gift of prophecy or any gift from God, actually. You don't get it because you earned it. That's why it's called a gift and not an award.
So those gifts that we spoke of earlier, the 9 gifts of God, these are supposed to be freely given by God to any of us, to all of us, right? We are all possessed a gift. I can't draw very well. I can't do a lot of work with my hands, but I do possess some gifts. I possess the gift of gab. Clearly, I talk to you guys every week, so clearly the gift of gab is one of mine. But could that perhaps mean something else? We'll discuss that here in a little while, but the gifts of the Spirit are freely given from God, and they're given to all different people. And not everyone has the same gift. That's why there are 9 of them. We each have things we can do individually, right, that not other people can do, right? These are our gifts. Well, being prophetic or having prophecy, or as we talked about a little bit ago, I would even say being a psychic, for a lack of better word, is just that. It's a gift of God. Is a gift from the Lord, a gift given to us that we're able to have, not something that we've been awarded because we earned this or we did that, or it's just something that we have the ability to do, right?
Which means you could move in signs and wonders and miracles and have terrible character.
which means you don't necessarily have to be walking perfectly with God to get these spirit gifts. And though it's taught differently across different denominations, I'm not here to preach or teach Christianity. I'm merely giving my inspect on it. However, it is believed and taught again across different denominations that prophecy is given just like any other gift to anybody. You don't necessarily have to be of the Christian faith to have gifts, and I would also agree with that, as once again we point to psychics who don't always claim to be of the Christian faith. So you don't necessarily have to be a Christian or even the best Christian to have gifts of the Spirit or have individual abilities, I would say.
I didn't say you should, I just said you could.
Big difference between should and could, right?
So you can prophesy, do miracles, all this kind of stuff. And what did Jesus say to the guy who came to him in the last days? There'll be false prophets, and they'll say, didn't we do miracles? Didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we cast out demons? And what's his point? I never what? Knew you. So can we agree that the gifts of the Spirit do not mean that you have a great relationship with God? They just mean you asked for something and Jesus gave it to you.
So you don't have to do anything special to get any of the gifts, including being a prophet, if you will. But what is a prophet? How does the Bible define prophet? And don't worry, we're going to go over many, many things tonight. This is just the beginning. Everybody has a say, and everybody deserves a say. I won't get too preachy, I hope, but for those who aren't exactly into the Christian style, don't worry, just stick around. There's a lot more to come. Just bear with us. But for those who are, I hope you enjoyed this section. How to understand the prophets. So what is a prophet, right? What does being a prophet mean? We discussed earlier how I do believe psychic is another word for prophet, and that can be debated left and right. That's up to you guys. But the whole point is, what is a prophet? What does a prophet do? How would one be defined, at least under the Christian faith?
Ezekiel, Obadiah, Habakkuk. What do these names have in common? Well, they're 3 of the 15 prophets that have their own books in the Bible.
And if you've tried to read these books, odds are you got lost in their dense poetry and strange imagery. But these books are super important for understanding the overall biblical story.
I mean, I don't mind dense poetry, and I love strange imagery, so, that don't sound horrible to me.
When I hear the word prophet, I think of a fortune teller, someone who predicts the future.
Which we all know when we speak about Revelation and end times and things of that nature. Those are all future predictions by people way in the past.
That's what being a prophet means in many cultures, but not in the Bible.
What do you mean?
While the biblical prophets sometimes speak about the future, they're way more than fortune tellers.
How should I think about them?
By the way, spoiler warning, if you haven't read the Bible yet, there's some stuff in here you might not have heard. So fair enough, spoiler warning.
Well, they were Israelites who had a radical encounter with God's presence, and then were commissioned to go and speak on God's behalf.
Like a representative.
Right. And the thing that they cared about the most is the mutual partnership that existed between God and the Israelites.
Right, the partnership. God rescued Israel from slavery in Egypt and invited them to become a nation of justice and generosity that would represent his character to the nations.
And so this partnership required all Israelites to give their trust and allegiance to their God alone. In the Bible, this partnership's called the covenant.
But the leaders, the priests, the kings, led Israel astray, and they broke the covenant.
And so this is where the prophets came in, to remind Israel of their role in the partnership. And they did this in 3 ways. First, they were constantly accusing Israel for violating the terms of the covenant. The charges usually include idolatry, alliances with other nations and their gods, and allowing injustice towards the poor.
So like covenant lawyers.
Right. And so second, the prophets called the Israelites to repent, which means simply to turn around. They spoke of God's mercy to forgive them if they would just confess and change their ways.
But Israel and its leaders didn't change. Things went from bad to worse.
And so that brings us to the third way the prophets emphasized the covenant. They announced the consequences for breaking it, which they called the Day of the Lord.
Oh yeah, the apocalypse. Visions of the end of the world.
Well, sort of.
And we will definitely get into Revelation here very, very shortly.
The prophets were mostly interested in how God would bring his justice on Israel's corruption and on the violent nations around them. And while explaining these local events, they often used cosmic imagery.
Cosmic imagery?
Like I said earlier, I like some cosmic imagery. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, like Jeremiah. He described the exile of the Israelites to Babylon as the undoing of creation itself. The land dissolves into chaos and disorder, no light, no animals or people. Or Isaiah described the downfall of Babylon as the disintegration of the cosmos, stars falling from the sky, the sun going dark. For the prophets, when God acts in human history to bring justice, it's a day of the Lord.
So the prophets aren't talking about the end of the world.
Well, hold on. They're doing many things at once.
So they are talking about the end of the world then.
The cosmic imagery shows how these important events of their day fit into the bigger story of God's mission to bring down every corrupt and violent nation once and for all.
And you can't help but wonder, especially looking around America, if it isn't under God's judgment, especially the whole world. If you look what's going on, it makes you wonder if the whole world isn't at the time of Revelation, right? Because there was a lot that went on in that book. And I had a really wonderful conversation with a guy the other day. And if you're listening, my friend, you know who you are, and I really, really appreciate you, man. That was a wonderful conversation we had about Revelation and prophecy and Bible, and it was just absolutely amazing, and I loved it. So if you're listening, bud, shout out to you. But Revelation, that is probably the only prophecy in the Bible that is yet to be fulfilled. And when he said that to me, I kind of took a step back, because as I thought about it, he's right. All the prophecies in the Bible have been fulfilled in the Bible, except for Revelation. And Revelation can be determined in a bunch of different ways, and we kind of discussed that too. There's a lot of different interpretations, but the general interpretation is kind of scary. It's a big war, and I guess God comes back. See, this is the part that's argued over or debated over within Christianity, is whether the rapture, where God comes back and takes people away, is before or after the Great Tribulation, which is the worst part of Revelation. It's where the skies turn dark and the rivers turn to blood and all kind of craziness occurs. But the Revelation is a sign from the prophet John of Patmos, and it's all written to be supposedly happening in a time in the future. And a lot of it, I gotta say, as I look around, I see a lot of different signs and wonders starting to occur, and I could be stretching things, I do agree. I just like to keep an open mind about things. But we've had things like the snake spotted on the Western Wall, which is part of a Jewish prophecy, as well as the arguably the Mandela effect. And this is something else I brought up with my friend the other day I was talking with, but the Mandela effect is also something that it could be argued is the great delusion, if you will. And that could be argued from either side. And there are a lot of Christians that do believe their Bible has been changed, and that very well could be a part of prophecy. Could we be living in prophecy today? Well, that's yet to be argued and determined. And some would argue since the day Jesus was killed on the cross, we've been living in the end times. So maybe that's why all our lives that's been drilled into our heads, right? Another well-known biblical, although non-canonical, which means it's not in the regular Bible, or is it? There's a lot of prophecy in, I'm sure you guys who listen to this show especially have heard of Enoch. That's right. There's a lot of prophecy in the book of Enoch, which we're going to hear about right now.
The prophecy of Enoch. Jude 1, verse 14 to 15. And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds, which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. This wonderful, inspirational, divinely given passage of Scripture written by Jude announces to me one of the most glorious events in the biblical calendar of prophecy. By the gift of word of knowledge, the prophecy of Enoch was revealed to Jude. Enoch was one of the patriarchs of faith in the Bible. He had a testimony that he walked with God by faith until he was translated. Hebrews 11, verse 5.
So Enoch, even though he was only 7 generations from Adam, was already seeing the revelations in time. He was the first prophet of all time. That is interesting. But, you know, the Bible isn't the only place that Scripture has prophecy. There are different Scriptures that also contain prophecy. One of these other Scriptures is actually the Quran. And the Quran actually has some interesting predictions in it that may have already come true.
Prophecies play a very important role in the religious world, including the religion of Islam. Now, there are various events that have occurred which, according to Islamic theology, are actual fulfillments of prophecies mentioned in the Muslim holy book, the Quran. Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to FTD Facts. My name is Leroy Kenton, and this episode is going to feature passages from the Quran.
Well, welcome to the Den, Leroy. Tell us a little bit about the prophecies from the Quran.
And the prophetic events that are said to be the fulfillment of those prophecies. So let's jump into it right away. We have fingerprints coming up at number 10. And that passage goes as follows. Their skins will bear witness against them so as to what they have been doing. And that's found in Surah 41, verses 21 of the Quran. So of course we can see in our world that the fingerprint system is being used currently when people travel through borders. Well, there's not much traveling through borders right now given the whole self-isolation thing, as well as it's used in criminal investigations. So Muslims see this and say, well, yeah, the fingerprints testify against them, so this is a fulfillment of that prophecy.
And I can't say that I argue with that at all, actually. I would actually agree that the fingerprints of each person being unique as it is would definitely testify to or against everything they've done.
Next up at number 9, we have the establishment of Israel. So this one is pretty interesting. And this passage goes as follows. And after him we said to the children of Israel, dwell ye in the promised land, and when the time of the promise of the latter days come, we shall bring you together out of various people. And we currently now have the established nation of Israel. While a lot of people don't consider Israel to be a country, it still is recognized as a legitimate country by nations like the United States. As well as there are various groups of Jewish people who live in the current land of Israel. So for Muslims, this is evidence, especially at the part in the passage that says, we shall bring you together out of various people.
And for those who do not know, the state of Israel was reestablished in 1948, which a lot of Christians do also consider part of prophecy.
The prophecy at number 8 that's been fulfilled in the Quran, according to Muslims, is the new transportation systems. There's a verse in the Quran that says, and when the she-camels 10 months pregnant are abandoned. There's another verse that says, and he has created horses and mules and asses that you may ride them.
To be clear, that is speaking of the creature of the donkey.
And as a source of beauty, and he will create what you do not yet know. So of course those were used as methods of transportation back in the day, but currently now it just couldn't even enter into the mind of people back then that we would have the kind of transport systems that we do now, like trains and cars. I mean, and the list goes on. What are there? There's bicycles, there's skateboards. Well, they probably had their own version of skateboards back then because they did have wheels and carriages. Jetpacks, we have jetpacks.
And that interpretation, I would say, can be a little argued, but anyway, that aside, could you imagine, though, and here's a point that I was going to make earlier and I actually kind of forgot to sit on, was could you imagine trying to describe things in the future, like seeing things 1,000 years from now, even 100 years from now? Could you describe it using words we have today? Could you try to imagine being thousands of years ago trying to see or actually seeing today's world? How could you explain it? That would be some really weird, almost poetic language, right? Like we hear in the Bible, in Revelation, in different things. One thing that always bothered me was the mark of the beast that it talked about, and how it would be in the forehead or the hand. And then we hear a lot about the RFID chips. Could that be the prophecy being fulfilled, or could that be a prophecy being self-fulfilled? And again, we'll get to that much, much later in the show.
And as a matter of fact, while we're on the topic of animals as a means of transportation back in those days, there was also a prophecy in the Quran that spoke about zoos. In Surah 81 it says, "And when the wild beasts are gathered together." So Muslims look at the modern day zoos that we have, where we have different wild animals and all of that in a mini version of their habitat, and we can just go and we can look at them in cages or in aquariums, whatever it may be. We collect animals in zoos. We collect animals in zoos altogether.
Again, I would argue that's a bit of a stretch of an interpretation on that one, but that's just my personal opinion.
Prophecy number 6 is also modern communication systems. Surah 81 says, "And when various people are brought together." So we have all kinds of various transport systems where we can, come together really quickly. And we also have communication systems like cell phones, satellite systems, the internet, all of that. We can actually come together right now.
And we can come together right now and at any given time thanks to the internet, and that could definitely be the fulfillment of a prophecy, albeit, once again, just with what we've been given, I would say it's stretching it a bit, but that's beside the point. It is still a fulfillment. We can communicate with each other all across the world, diverse places and diverse people, which is something that is amazing about the backstage lounge and that I love, is that we can connect to people, all of our listeners all across the world. So if you guys want to hang out with us back there, just go over to rippinrabbithole.com and the backstage 24/7 lounge, and that's one of my favorite hangouts. But anyway, it's the fact that we can talk to people from all across the world. I just love it. We've got people from England and America and just all around the world. I've heard people come in from the Himalayas. Yeah, that's right. We've got somebody, as you guys know, that comes in, hangs out back there from the Himalayas. All across the world, we're able to connect. And when I was a kid, you really couldn't connect with somebody in Himalayas unless you paid a couple $100 a minute to talk to them on the phone. And that was such a different world. And now we can communicate so easily. So I definitely see how it could be a prophecy fulfilled there. But it looks like the clock has got us on the first half of the DarkWolf's Den Show. I hope everybody has enjoyed so far. We've covered religion in the first half, but that's not all the prophecy. There's a lot more than religious prophecy, right? And we're going to get to that in the second half, so you guys stick around. We got a whole lot more coming right after this break. Don't you touch that dial.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Sex in the city? Nope. Interview with a vampire? Nope. If you build it, they will come? Febreze? Tweeze in the middle? Wrong again. Depends. Nope. Welcome to the Twilight Zone, my friends. A phenomenon known as the Mandela effect. You may have heard of it. You may want to not neglect. Unbecoming, awake, and spiritually inclined. So sit back, relax, while I blow your mind. Take the thumb off the cell, stop following the sheep. Down the rabbit hole we go. Are you ready for that leap? The Zapruder film, #JFK. I looked at the footage and I said, what the heck? How come there are 6 people in that dang car? Stretch limo, for me, this was all too bizarre. A glass behind the driver, no way, Jose. I remember in the car, my mind was in total disarray. Trying to make sense of what I was seeing, what I was witnessing. Didn't connect with my inner being. A second woman in the car for me was only the first lady. Do you smell what the rock is cooking? All this seemed kinda shady. Berenstein Bears. Nope. Shazam? Sinbad? Not in this reality. Good Lord. An awakening. Was it all a revelation? The naysayers and skeptics call it confabulation. They say you misremembered and call it bat crazy. Did you smoke a doobie? Maybe that's why it's a little bit hazy. Unless you experience it, you'll never know. But enough of that. On with this Mandela effect flow. Mandela effect in the house. What did the world happen to Ed McMahon? In this reality, Publishers Clearinghouse was not a fan. Never the spokesperson, but we remember it clear as day. McMahon holding that check while the winner yelled out, "Yay!" American Family Publishers, never heard of them until now. This Mandela effect has me raising the people's eyebrow. So many theories on what it could be. Have you ever heard of CERN and the LHC? Luke, I am your father. Nope. Sally Fields? Nope, wrong again. That stands for the Large Hadron Collider. I thought I would mention. You know, the machine that opens up portals into different dimensions? You're probably thinking that this is all science fiction, but you gotta think outside the box and have no restrictions. Alternate realities and parallel dimensions. Okay, I get some of your apprehensions. Could this all be a spiritual evolution? Cause the human race has grown tired of this toxic pollution. Mandela effect in the house. Crazy. Some people, they just don't understand. That's just the way it is. You know? Stay strong, my friends. That's just the way it is. Dolly has no braces? Are you serious? Good Lord. Joel Osteen. So what the heck happened to the owl? Oh my gosh. Oh, this is definitely the Twilight Zone. This is crazy.
Oh yeah, this is crazy. The most famous song in Mandela Effect history. Juanito 1975 with the Mandela Effect rap. Hi everyone, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit. How was your week? Hopefully it was a short one. Are you enjoying tonight's performance of DarkWolf's Den Show, Prophecy? If you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. We're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, bringing you the very best of common sense radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. I'll be back again tomorrow night for a look at haunted houses to kick off October 1st. I can't wait. Have you ever been through a real haunted house? Do you know the ways to tell when you're in one? We're going to kick through the doors and kick off our Spooktober here at the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. The entire month of October will be Halloween themed. Then Friday night, join us for our October edition of our first weekend of every month regular, the Mandela Monthly. Co-host Moneybag73 will be here as we dive through the Mandela effect of Twilight Zone haunted Mandela effects. It's going to be a lot of fun. Then Saturday night, Jerry Hicks returns with the DarkWolf's Den Show and a look at the Immortals. You'll want to join him 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, Saturday, October 3rd, as I take a night off on a Saturday, and Jerry covers with the DarkWolf's Den Show. Then Sunday night, we'll end out the weekend right together with the fantastic Sunday, October 4th, 2020, for a very special Spooktober edition of the Fantastic Fun Show. It's going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait. We're going to return back to Jerry Hicks and the DarkWolf's Den Show, a look at prophecy tonight. Right here on the very best of common sense radio. A lot more to come. Stick around. You're listening to the RippinRabbitHole.com.
were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Show, also known as the second half of the weekend kickoff for the Animals of Radio. That's right. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, September 30th, 2020, we are talking about prophecy. That's right. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, the edge of your seat, or anywhere in between, we're glad you came back to join us for this episode. That's right. I prophesy that you're going to enjoy the rest of this episode. At least I hope so. You know. But I did promise we would come off of religion, but it made me think on the break of one more question that I would like to ask. And that is, what are modern day prophets? Do we have modern day prophets? Or are prophets only regulated to the ancient scriptures? We talked a lot about history, but what about modern day, right? Do we have modern day prophets? Well, there's a lot of different religious systems that do believe they have. Like the Pope, right? The Catholic Church. We've got the Pope that's supposed to be the speaker of God on the earth, so, right, that should be considered a prophet. Also, an offshoot of the Christian faith called the Mormons have a belief that their leader, their president, is a prophet on the earth. And I gotta say, some of their stuff is really interesting, but I don't know about prophetic. That's yet to be determined, of course, and as is the same with most prophecies. You know, also on this show here before, we've talked about Mr. Edgar Casey, and he's had a lot of prophecies that have come true. Mind you, there are some that have not, and it can be argued why or why not that may occur, but there are a lot that have came true. Like, one of them that always stuck with me was that we would find a chamber under the Sphinx the paw of the Sphinx of the paw. The paw of the Sphinx. However, it turns out we did find a chamber under the paw of the Sphinx, so that one turned out to be right. Another prophet of modern day that, or at least modern times, that you guys may or may not have heard of is named Baba Vanga. And Baba Vanga was a Bulgarian lady that had the gift of prophecy, I would say. She was blind, but she could see much, much more than this world.
Baba Vanga, for those of you who don't know, was a blind Bulgarian mystic and clairvoyant. She believed that she had the ability to heal people and predict the future. She started receiving her visions after she lost her sight at the age of 12. From there, she has made countless predictions with an 85% success rate, meaning that it could be possible for the predictions that I'm about to tell you to come true. Starting off this countdown, we have the diseases. Got some good news for you all. Baba Vanga predicted that we will find the cure to any disease. I mean, that's good. Bad news, that's going to happen thousands of years in the future. She believes that in the future we will master cloning. She said, and I quote, "The rise of cloning allows doctors to cure any disease as the body is simply and easily replaced."
And with current medical science, I would say that we're getting much, much closer to cloning and DNA replication than much, much further off than even Baba Vanga seen it coming.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that one. But I don't think I will be alive when there are clones roaming around. In our 9th spot, we have the death date. Here's a question for you all. Would you want to know what day you're going to die? Let me know in the comments below. I personally would not want to know. I would get too anxious just knowing about it. But here's the thing. Baba Vanga predicted her own death. Yeah, apparently she knew the exact day she was going to die. She passed away on August 11th, 1996 at the age of 85.
If that is true, then she would be the only psychic in history, to the best of my knowledge anyway, or prophet in history, let me rephrase that, to have predicted their own death, because as at least by most psychics that I know, they can predict things about other people but never about themselves. It's one of the curses of being psychic, actually. But it's interesting that the Baba Vanga was able to actually predict her own death. That is definitely a first in a case file for me.
In our 8th spot, we have the Syrian gas attack. Before Baba Vanga passed away, she warned us all of an attack that was going to happen. She said, Muslims would use chemical warfare against Europeans. Now, not much was thought about this until the 2017 sarin gas attack in Syria. People then thought that her prediction closely resembled the events of that attack. So, in April of 2017, a chemical attack in Syria led to around 70 deaths and 100 injuries. It was thought that the Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad was the one who initiated the chemical attack against his own people. Sarin is a highly toxic chemical. It's considered to be 20 times deadlier than cyanide. Basically, it attacks the nervous system and causes incredibly painful and uncontrollable muscle contractions that make it impossible to breathe. As a result, you die by asphyxiation. It was an incredibly tragic event that Baba Vanga supposedly predicted.
Again, I would argue that that is a hair of a stretch of interpretation, but then again...
Moving on, we have Russia. Now, Baba Vanga had tons of predictions about Russia. Some more terrifying than others. So basically, she believes that Putin and Russia will dominate the world. Her predictions state that Russia will become the lord of the world. Not only that, she said, and I quote, "Nobody can stop Russia." Okay, but that's not the freaky part. She also said, and I quote, "All will thaw as if ice. Only one remain untouched. Vladimir. Glory, glory of Russia." She somehow knew back in 1979 that Vladimir Putin was going to become president. But her predictions about Russia and Putin don't stop there. She also claimed that there will be a World War III, and I quote, "Russia will not only survive, it will dominate the world." Yeah, that's pretty scary.
If any other superpower were to dominate the world, I would argue, if it weren't China, that it would definitely be Russia. And that is interesting that she knew Putin would lead the country long before he did. Then again, it could be argued that Vlad is a regular Russian name, but I don't know. It is interesting when you have things line up like that. You know, sometimes you just can't ignore it, huh?
In our 6th spot, we have the Beast. Thank gosh we won't be around in a couple of thousands of years, because some weird stuff is going to happen in the year 3000. So, in the Jonas Brothers song, The Year 3000, they believe that the world will be underwater. But that ain't going to happen according to Vanga, although that would be a better scenario. She believes that from 3815 to 3878, civilization will be destroyed and people will live like beasts until a new religion rises out of the darkness. That's great, so all of society and everything we've established will just be abolished and the world will be complete mayhem. See, good thing we will be gone before that, unless that whole cloning thing happens.
Or unless, they figure out immortality between now and then. Maybe we'd make it there, but it brings the argument once again, how could you describe things that far in the future using the language that we have now? One would struggle at best to describe anything that we would even dream that could happen in the future. Try to think of somebody from the 1800s talking about the internet and common day, smartphones and communication devices, and just think about somebody from that time frame trying to describe that. There would be no language or words for it. And just the same, how would one describe something thousands of years in the future?
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with global warming. Whether you believe in global warming or not, Baba Vanga certainly did. In fact, she said that from 2033 to around 2045, polar ice caps will melt and ocean levels will rise.
And not that I believe in the climate change propaganda that's gone around. Climate changes, that's why it's climate, that's what it does. But the Earth has natural changes, and I'm not going to get on that soapbox because I'll be on that for hours. But back to the idea at hand, we do know, at least we're told, let me rephrase that Greenland has started melting at an expansive rate, as well as Antarctica melting at an expansive rate. So this one sounds like it actually could be spot on as far as timing, at the point at which there's no return and the ice caps change and perhaps that could even be a magnetic flip. We don't know,
It's kind of scary how she's not the only psychic to predict this, though. Nostradamus also predicted the exact same thing.
Which is interesting because she's actually been called the female Nostradamus, and we will definitely get into the great Nostradamus here shortly.
And I mean, yeah, it's coming true. A bit sooner than she predicted, but it's happening. In fact, she believes that in 2341, the Earth will be destroyed and will become uninhabitable. Although, it may happen sooner than that.
And let's really, really hope that that does not happen.
Coming in at number 4, we have the assassination. Among the countless predictions about Russia, Vanga had another one surrounding Russia's president. She said that in the year 2020, there will be an attempt made to assassinate Putin. Now, she did say attempt, making it seem like it wasn't successful. But apparently it will get carried away by someone in his government. So he better be watching his back. Someone may be coming for him.
And it's not like the news cycle would let that out with all the other top stories that they've got going on, like, facial accessories, things like that. But I don't know, maybe the story would slip through the cracks, but we've only got a little bit while left in 2020, guys, so this is one that we can definitely watch for. And if it does happen, you bet I will be talking about it on at least one more episode. That you can be guaranteed, because this is one you've heard right here, a prediction for 2020 that Putin would have an attempt on his life, yet we've not heard of such actions to occur so far. So guys, keep an ear open for that, and this old wolf will keep his ears open for it too.
In our third spot, we have Earth's orbit. So here's another prediction by Vanga that is pretty vague. Like, I have no clue what she meant by this.
Now, let me be clear. This is somebody else talking about space, not me this time. I promised you guys I'd come off the space topic, and I've done my best to. So understand, this is not me. This is our presenter right now.
But Vanga said that in the year 2023, or around then, the Earth's orbit will change. Like, what are we talking about here? Does she mean we'll get hauled into a better orbit? Or is something funky going to happen with our solar system? Like, maybe we're going to get pulled into an area in space that's inhabitable. Then we would die from this drastic change. I wish she gave us more information on that.
A lot of people talk about Nibiru or Planet X and the whole Nibiru system, as some believe, that may come through our solar system. And it would take something like that to change the orbit of the Earth. But if that does occur, then who knows, maybe the Nibiru system is only just a few years off, guys.
Making our way down the list at number 2, we have the alien hybrids.
I'm sorry, what?
So, Vanga has made predictions about aliens before. You can check those out in my previous video. So, she definitely was a believer in extraterrestrials. She predicted that from 4302 to 4674, the concepts of evil and hatred will be eliminated. That's good, right? Our world would be way more positive without evil and hate. Well, let me continue. She also stated that humans are immortal and have assimilated with aliens. Like, what? Hold on. How did we go from a peaceful world to a world filled with aliens as our friends? So somehow, in a couple of thousand years, we will figure out how to live forever.
So I guess this is after everybody turns into human beasts. This is interesting.
Maybe the answer to this lies in aliens. Maybe they provide us with the key to immortality.
It is said that some alien species live thousands and thousands of years of human Earth years anyway, so it could be that they may hold a secret to immortality. Maybe that'll have to be the next episode we do, right? Immortals, since it's come up a couple times tonight. Alright, next episode, Immortals. You heard it right here first. Next episode will be Immortals. Now, back to Baba Vanga and the prophecies.
And in our number 1 spot, we have Chernobyl. Baba Vanga has predicted countless natural disasters and tragedies, including Chernobyl. Apparently, Vanga warned others about a nuclear disaster. Some say the disaster that she was seeing was Chernobyl. So back in 1986 in Ukraine, an accident in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant caused the reactor to explode. It is said that this is the worst nuclear disaster to date. It resulted in the death of around 31 people. However, the explosion had lasting effects. It's reported that the accident was responsible for nearly 20,000 cases of thyroid cancer from being exposed to the nuclear chemicals. On top of that, the radioactive materials leaked into pastures and was eaten by cows, and then was later found in their milk that children were drinking.
This was easily the worst nuclear accident ever on the planet Earth.
It was a very devastating tragedy. Again, maybe one that Vanga predicted.
And that was the most amazing Top 10 channel, and a huge shout out to those guys. And we appreciate you guys out there. I really do like that channel, guys. That is not a plug, that is just a personal recommendation. That is a channel that I enjoy a lot. If you've enjoyed what you just heard here, that's the kind of topics they talk about, so you might really enjoy it too. Anyway, moving along, we've heard a lot about prophecy so far. We've heard about biblical prophecy. We've heard about Edgar Cayce. We've heard about Baba Vanga. But there's another group that has always really, really intrigued me, and that would be the Native Americans. That's right, Native American prophecies. Check this out, guys.
The Story of the Blue Kachina and the Red Kachina by Chief Dan Ivahema, the Hopi traditional caretaker. It was told to me that first the Blue Kachina would start to be seen at the dances and would make his appearance known to children in the plaza during the night dance. This event would tell us that end times are very near. Then the Blue Star Kachina would physically appear in our heavens, which would mean that we were in the end times. In the final days, we will look up in our heavens, and we will witness the return of the two brothers who helped create the world in the birthing time.
And, this is once again something that we find across so many ancient civilization stories, is this idea of the gods coming from the sky and returning from the sky in the end times, whether it be the Christians or pretty much any nation across the world, tribal or not. All of them have stories of their gods returning from the sky. So I find that very intriguing also.
Pogang Hoya is the guardian of our North Pole, and his brother, Polongai Hoya, is the guardian of the South Pole. In the final days, the Blue Star Kachina will come to be with his nephews, and they will return the earth to its natural rotation, which is counterclockwise.
Now, I find that very intriguing too. I cannot find any science to back that idea, but I do find it very intriguing just the same.
This fact is evidenced in many petroglyphs that speak of the zodiac, and within the Mayan and Egyptian pyramids. The rotationing Earth has been manipulated by not-so-benevolent star beings. The twins will be seen in our northwestern skies. They will come and visit to see who still remembered the original teachings, flying in their putovaks, or flying shields. They will bring many of their star family with them in the final days.
Flying shields. Now, isn't that interesting? Am I the only one that thinks that sounds like the classic UFO, a flying shield? As a matter of fact, the way flying saucer actually got named was the Kenneth Arnold experience that he had while he was flying. When he described what he had seen in the air, he said it was boomerang-like shaped objects that looked like they skipped across the air like a rock would skip across water, or like a saucer. Like a saucer skipping across water. A flying saucer is where that came from, and all he was actually doing was describing the action of the saucer, or of the object, and the term flying saucer was born. But either design would still look like a flying shield, so that's very interesting that that little detail would be in this Hopi ancient Indian prophecy.
The return of the Blue Star Kachina, who is also known as Nan-Gag Sohu, will be the alarm clock that tells us of the new day and the new way of life, a new world that is coming. This is where the changes will begin.
And interestingly enough, some people like Dolores Cannon and also New Age teachers speak a lot about a new earth coming also, so that also builds on this information here too.
They will start as fires that burn within us, and we will burn up with desires and conflict if we do not remember the original teachings and return to the peaceful way of life.
If that isn't the perfect description of today's world, fires burning within everybody, everybody's heated and upset and mad about something, and everybody wants to stand for something, and everybody's just so fired up about all these different issues, this anger building up and burning inside, and it's spreading across the world. As we've seen in 2020, there's been a major difference this year than most any year in at least my life anyway. So it could very well be that these prophecies are coming true, but that is just speculation.
Not far behind the twins will come the purifier, the red star Kachina, who will bring the day of purification.
And if anyone has read Revelations in the Bible, as we spoke about earlier, then you would know also that it speaks of a purification of the earth when God returns, according to that book.
On this day, the earth, her creatures, and all life as we know it will change forever. There will be messengers that will precede this coming of the purifier. They will leave messages to those on earth who remember the old ways.
Again, this reminds me of the two witnesses of the Revelation book, and again in the Bible. So it's weird how some of these really line up, because considering these cultures never ever knew each other at all.
The messages will be found written in the living stone, through the sacred grains, and even the waters.
Well, I could definitely argue that petroglyphs in the written stone would definitely be signs, as well as crop circles being signs in the grain. I don't know about the water yet.
From the purifier will issue forth a great red light. All things will change in their manner of being. Every living thing will be offered the opportunity to change from the largest to the smallest thing. Those who return to the ways given to us in the original teachings and live a natural way of life will not be touched by the coming of the purifier. They will survive and build a new world. Only in the ancient teachings will the ability to understand the message be found.
And once again, this mirrors the Christian lore with the end times coming and the Lord taking up his own, and it's really strange. If you follow the Lord's way, you'll be okay, like Passover in the Bible. If you do this or that, you'll be spared. It's really, really weird, once again, how these creation legends and these prophecy myths, if you will, that aren't so much myth, but these prophecies from these ancient tribes and these ancient peoples are so much alike, considering, once again, that these cultures were not supposed to have any contact at all.
It is important to understand that these messages will be found upon every living thing, even within our bodies, even within a drop of our blood. All life forms will receive this message from the twins, those that fly, the plants, even the rabbit.
You heard that, AJ? All the way down to the rabbit. You're in luck. I guess we're all going to be offered the chance in the end times to make this change, whatever it may be. Of course, the New Age people speak of the light body and how we're going to be transformed into a body of light. And the Christians speak of the spirit body that we will gain at the end times. It's all interesting that all of these different tribal nations and all of these different cultures have these pretty much exact same or similarity in their prophecies and their end time prophecies, and everything they say is going to happen in detailed events all seem to be mirroring each other, strangely enough.
The appearance of the twins begins a period of 7 years, which will be our final opportunity to change our ways.
And in the Bible, in the book of Daniel, we've got the 7 years of Daniel before the tribulation.
Everything we experience is all a matter of choice. Many will appear to have lost their souls in these final days. So intense will be the nature of the changes that those who are weak in spiritual awareness will go insane. For we are nothing without spirit. They will disappear, for they are just hollow vessels for anything to use.
And in certain supernatural circles, there are talk of people who are just that. It's been called NPC or non-player character. I don't like this concept personally, but there is this idea that there are these shell people. And we talked about this a couple episodes ago, how the idea of these people that can appear as people but not really be as such. So even this is a concept that we're seeing in this day and age.
Life will be so bad in the cities that many will choose to leave this plane, some in whole groups.
And once again, I can't help but think and look around and wonder how much spot on this really is, because across the world there has been outbreaks of craziness, let's say, that has made the cities, at least some cities, unlivable. And I know some areas that aren't even restocking their stores anymore.
Only those who return to the values of the old ways will be able to find peace of mind. For in the earth we shall find relief from the madness that will be all around us. It will be a very hard time for women with children, for they will be shunned, and many of the children in these times will be unnatural. Some being from the stars, some from the past worlds, some will even be created by man in an unnatural manner.
And once again, how would an ancient prophecy know that we are doing DNA splicing even once again in this day and age, in this time? It makes you wonder how much of this lining up is really getting us right where we could be in the end times. Like these symbols and signs do seem to be appearing in common day, and this is a Hopi prophecy from thousands of years ago. So how could they predict man creating, like literally creating other humans? Of course, I guess that could just be a prediction that they just happen to by chance to get right all at the same time of these things going on, right?
And will be soulless. Many of the people in this time will be empty in spirit. They will have sampaku, no life force in their eyes. As we get close to the time of the arrival of the purifier, there will be those who walk as ghosts through the cities, through canyons they will have constructed in their man-made mountains. Those that walk through these places will be very heavy in their walk. It will appear almost painful as they take each step, for they will be disconnected from the spirit and the earth. After the arrival of the twins, they will begin to vanish before our eyes like so much smoke. Others will have great deformities, both in the mind and upon their bodies. There will be those who would walk in the body that are not from this reality, for many of the gateways that once protected us will be opened.
Yeah, that just said clear as day. There will be beings here from other realities. And it makes you wonder if the theory of the Mandela effect of the reality shifting and reality switching, perhaps this plane here that we're on, whatever it may be, could end up being a reality base, if you will. Not base reality, but if we're shifting through realities, perhaps we're reaching a single reality with the many different dimensional reality peoples meeting in one spot. This is, of course, theory, and just complete theory and speculation, but it's interesting how it lines up with this prophecy.
There will be much confusion between sexes and children and their elders.
And yet again, I cannot help but look around in modern times and wonder how they got it so very right.
Life will get very perverted, and there will be little social order in these times. Many will ask for the mountains themselves to fall upon them, just to end the misery.
And once again, this mirrors the Bible, as the Bible says, and I don't want to quote word for word, but paraphrasing, quote, men will beg the mountains to fall upon them, and will beg for death, and death will not be given unto them. So that is interesting, once again, that these Hopi prophecies mirror these biblical prophecies. Very intriguing indeed.
Still others will appear as if untouched by what is occurring. The ones who remember the original teachings and have reconnected their hearts and spirit. Those who remember who their mother and father is. The Pahana, who have left to live in the mountains and forest. When the purifier comes, we will see him first as a small red star, which will come very close and sit in our heavens watching us to see how well we have remembered the sacred teachings. This purifier will show us many miraculous signs in our heavens. In this way, we will know Creator is not a dream.
And once again, in the Bible, and it's amazing how much this is mirroring the Bible, I gotta say. But in the Bible, when the apostles ask Jesus, how will we know the end times are coming? He says there will be signs and wonders in the skies as well as on the land. Well, watch the skies for signs and wonders. That is interesting because it's mentioned here that the red kachina will do wonders and signs in the sky also when it arrives.
Even those who do not feel their connection to the Spirit will see the face of Creator across the sky. Things unseen will be felt very strongly. Many things will begin to occur that will not make sense, for reality will be shifting back in and out of the dream state.
And once again, this explanation reminds me of a good theory for the Mandela effect, interestingly enough.
There will be many doorways to the lower world that will open at this time. Things long forgotten will come back to remind us of our past creations. All living things will want to be present for this day when time ends, and we will enter the forever cycle of the fifth world. We will receive many warnings allowing us to change our ways from below the earth as well as above. Then one morning, in a moment, we will awaken to the red dawn. The sky will be the color of blood. Many things will then begin to happen that right now we are not sure of their exact nature.
And the Bible says the sun will darken and the moon will turn blood red. So here we have this red sky, and it doesn't mention the sun, but it also mentions the sky is red, which would mean the moon in the sky would be red, by logic, of course.
For much of reality will not be as it is now. There will be many strange beasts upon the earth in those days, some from the past, and some we have never seen.
And in the end times, things will be as they were in the days of Noah.
The nature of mankind will appear strange in these times when we walk between worlds, and we will house many spirits, even within our bodies. After a time, we will again walk with our brothers from the stars, and rebuild this earth, but not until the purifier has left his mark upon the universe. No living thing will go untouched, here or in the heavens. The way through this time, it is said, is to be found in our hearts, and reuniting with our spiritual self, getting simple and returning to living with and upon the earth, and in harmony with her creatures, remembering that we are the caretakers, the firekeepers of the Spirit. Our relatives from the stars are coming home to see how well we have fared on our journey.
What is very interesting about this prophecy, especially in general, is the fact that it mentions a either-or scenario. This can happen if things don't change. You can survive if you change into a more spiritualistic styled person. Get back to spirit and creation and nature, opposed to modern tech and getting lost in the modern ways. So it's really interesting that this particular prophecy actually offers an either-or scenario for, survival. Just like the Bible also offers the either-or scenario. Either you choose to believe in Jesus Christ and God the Father and that, or you don't and you pay the price according to the Bible. So there's this mirroring of these different civilizations, these different prophecies against these ancient civilizations that never really should have known each other or should have met. And neither one of these civilizations should have met our next prophet and the most famous prophet of all, the Michel de Nostradamus, also known as Nostradamus. And he was known to write a large amount of quatrains, poetic quatrains, that were supposed to have told the future. But they're very, very ambiguous, extremely ambiguous. And I'll make a point on that later. But before we get to that, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Michel de Nostradamus, also known as Nostradamus.
Nostradamus predicted 942 futures in his 1555 book, The Prophecies. Many consider him a lunatic, a fraud, a liar, and other much worse names. But there are some who think that he was right.
And Nostradamus wrote in a very poetic style, in what's called quatrains, or sets of paragraphs.
His predictions, written as obscure short poems called quatrains, are interpreted by some as the word of God. But whether he is an ages-old prophet or a medieval quack, we shall leave that up to you.
As with any prophet and prophecy that is made, it stands for itself and can be seen as truth or not. Of course, that's the idea, right? If it's a prophecy, then it's recorded, then we would know, we could be able to look back and go, okay, did that happen or did that not? However, it's that whole looking back thing. I'll get into that in just a minute.
The death of King Henry II of France. The following quatrain is believed to foretell the death of Henry II of France in 1559. He was the King of France while Nostradamus was alive. It reads, "The young lion will overcome the older one on the field of combat in a single battle. He will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. 2 wounds made 1. Then he dies a cruel death."
Okay, this seems like a pretty simple prophecy right here. Is it fulfilled in any way? Because it is full of a lot of symbology, but is there anything that happens that matches that?
In the summer of 1559, Henry II took part in a jousting tournament in celebration of 2 royal weddings. During his 3rd match, he took on the captain of his Scottish Guard, Gabriel de Montgomery. Both men rode toward each other, and Montgomery struck him in the shoulder. The strike to Henry splintered his joust. As it broke, some shards flew through the visor and into Henry's face. These hurt his eyes and right temple. The king later died 10 days later from a brain abscess. And this might just be how Nostradamus predicted it. Let's look once again at his forecast.
Okay, then let's compare the prediction or the prophecy to the actual occurrence and see how close it is.
The young lion will overcome the older one. The references to the young and old lion could be Gabriel and Henry respectively. On the field of combat in a single battle. This perhaps refers to the jousting tournament. He will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. And this part could be referring to the wooden splinters that entered Henry II's eyes and temple. 2 wounds made 1, then he dies a cruel death. Henry II died from a cerebral abscess 10 days after the injury, a most painful death indeed. While some of this is eerily on point, there may be more to it. A 2015 research paper from the Survey of Ophthalmology notes that Henry II's wound was not examined right away, but that wooden fragments were found later in the orbit of the skull. This suggests an infection may have traveled from the eye socket to Henry II's brain. And that, historians, would have been a painful, and some might say, cruel death.
So what do you guys think? Do you think he predicted it and he called it, or do you think it's just way too much symbology that's being stretched to believe or make something fit what is going on? I'm on the fence on this. I'm going to be honest with you. I am very much on the fence when it comes to Nostradamus. But moving on, let's look at some more predictions that he may have made that have come true.
We will first give you the translation of the prophecy, and then give you the possible meaning. 9/11. Earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth will cause tremors around the new city. 2 great rocks will war for a long time. Then Arethusa will redden a new river. This is one we can all relate to, as many of the predictions happened a long time ago. The center of the earth doesn't make much sense, unless you think 9/11 was an inside job, in that the explosions came from within the building.
Which I think that most people here listening can agree with that possibility.
It might also mean that the USA is arguably the most powerful nation, the center of the earth.
I guess either interpretation works here, right?
The new city, New York, experiencing tremors makes sense, as does 2 great rocks, the Twin Towers. But they don't war for a long time, so was he talking about Islamic terrorism and the USA? Arethusa was a Greek nymph, and we can't relate that to the disaster, but redden a new river could be a river of blood. In another quatrain, he supposedly wrote, 2 steel birds will fall from the sky on the metropolis. The sky will burn at 45 degrees latitude. We don't need to explain steel birds, and New York lies at 40 degrees north.
Now, that is an interesting correlation there, isn't it?
Although there is evidence to suggest that the first part was made up, and the quatrain actually went like this. The sky will burn at 45 degrees latitude. Fire approaches the great new city. All those quatrains you might find talking about the 9th month are also fake. So really, the main things we can take are 2 rocks, 40 degrees, and the new city, as well as fire and blood. But Nostradamus wasn't exactly sparing with his fire and blood prophecies.
Which is one thing about prophecy, and it's just like the Bible in that aspect also, in the fact that it's down to interpretation. One can interpret it to mean one thing, whereas if it's read through the eyes of a totally different personality or even a different time frame, it could have a completely different interpretation or meaning to those people.
The rise of Hitler. From the depths of the west of Europe, a young child will be born of poor people. He who by his tongue will seduce a great troop. His fame will increase toward the realm of the east. 2 lines from another quatrain read, Beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Hister.
And I'd like you to note right there that it was from 2 different quatrains, and we'll get back to that in just a moment.
By West Europe, we can say Germany. Hitler wasn't born poor, but experienced poverty in his early life, and was homeless for a while. His populist policies were also meant to support the downtrodden. He was a great orator who got most of the country behind him and certainly seduced a great troop. His fame or infamy did increase. In the other lines, the beasts that crossed the river could be Germany invading countries, and of course, Hister could be Hitler, although it's thought Nostradamus was using it as a name for the Danube River.
And once again, it comes back down to the interpretation of the verse, doesn't it?
The French Revolution. From the enslaved populace, songs, chants, and demands, while princes and lords are held captive in prisons, these will in the future by headless idiots be received as divine prayers. We might look at the enslaved populace as what was known as the Third Estate, the common people of France who, for the most part, had been subjected to poverty and iniquities. They banded together with chants and demands and stormed the Bastille. Indeed, many of the noble people were imprisoned by the tides of the mob. As for Headless, we give you the guillotine.
Again, another very intriguing correlation within history.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing. Near the gates and within 2 cities, there will be scourges the like of which was never seen. Famine within plague, people put out by steel, crying to the great immortal God for relief. The 2 cities makes sense, and a scourge never seen was the dropping of the first atomic bomb on a populace. Famine and plague could be radiation poisoning, and those sufferers left crying for relief.
And once again, these are just a few examples of Nostradamus prophecies, but what's interesting is when a lot of people talk about Nostradamus, they have this habit of playing cafeteria prophet. So they'll go through and they'll select a line or two from this quatrain, then go ahead a couple books and select a line or two from this quatrain, and then select another line or two from a couple quatrains later, and by the time it's all done, they've put together a whole story of something that the prophet Nostradamus was supposed to have said, but they picked and choose from all these different quatrains to make their point. They've literally cherry-picked the information they want to make sense. And as you heard earlier, also a lot of false attributions have been given to Nostradamus. So there's a lot of question and interpretation of prophecy. And it's very interesting, once again, that it depends on who is interpreting it as to what meaning is gained out of it. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that prophecy is a real thing? Do you think we may be in end times prophecies? Do you think prophecy is just a Christian or a biblical thing, just a gift given by God? Or is it a gift given to only certain people who are able to see the future? In the end, ladies and gentlemen, you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the DarkWolf's Den Show for September 30th, 2020. I hope everybody has enjoyed our little look at prophecy. I know I've really enjoyed doing it for you guys, and I appreciate every last one of you, especially the ones that come back every week. We really appreciate every last one of you guys being here with us, whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat. We're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Guys, the den may be closing, but don't you worry, the weekend fun has only just begun. Make sure you come back Thursday through Sunday, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, for even more fun here on the radio. That's right. Thursday night, I'm going to prophesy. Check this out, guys. I prophesy that AJ the Rippin' Rabbit on the Rippin' Rabbit Hole live show Thursday night will be talking about haunted houses. Do you live in a haunted house? Have you ever lived in a haunted house? Actually, I have. The house I grew up in was actually haunted. I fully believe that to the bottom of my heart. I fully believe we lived in a haunted house. Then on Friday, AJ is going to be joined by special co-host Moneybags73 as they do the Mandela Monthly. That's right. The Mandela Monthly show, of course, guys. We're going to, I'm sure, talk about some very spooky topics on that episode. Then on Saturday, I'm going to be back to hang out with you guys one more time as we discuss immortals. That's right. The immortals that may walk the earth. Have there been people who have been granted the gift of immortality? If so, who are they? We're going to discuss all that and more. Then Sunday, come back for the Fantastic Fun Show. That's right, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit has the most fun you can have on radio every month on the Fantastic Fun Show. Who will be the Fantastic Fun King or the Fantastic Fun King Queen? We'll have to see. Will CSFL champion hold the king for one more round, or will somebody dethrone him? We will have to see. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you come and give him a run for his money on Sunday. And that's it for this weekend's lineup here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio. Speaking of Rippin' Common Sense, guys, I'm going to go over to my favorite hangout. It's the rippinrabbithole.com. That's right. That's RIPONRABBITHOLE. Over there, you're going to find the 24/7 Backstage Lounge. That's right. Come on over and hang out with us. We would love to have you over there. Select the 24/7 Backstage Lounge. Scroll about halfway down the page. Select the VIP entrance. Come on in and hang out with us. That's right. Also, go down to the bottom of every page while you're hanging out over there and hit that big red record button. Send us 30 seconds of audio and we'll get it on the air for you. That's right, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and on behalf of AJ the Rippin' Rabbit and everybody who's made this show possible and everybody at Rippin' Common Sense Radio, we thank you for being here, and remember, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay awake, but dare to dream. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That howl means the weekend has begun. If you enjoyed tonight's look at prophecy from the DarkWolf's Den Show, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. We're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, bringing you the very best of Common Sense Radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. I'll be back again tomorrow night, Thursday, October 1st, as we kick off Spooktober with haunted houses. Join me tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Have you ever been through a real haunted house? How do you know, and how can you tell when you're actually in one? We're going to kick off October right tomorrow night with haunted houses. Then Friday night, co-host Moneybag73 will join us for our monthly installation of Mandela Monthly. We're going to deal with haunted Mandela effects. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure to join us Friday, October 2nd, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Then Jerry Hicks is going to take on a Saturday night, prime time, October 3rd, starting at 7 p.m. Jerry Hicks and the DarkWolf's Den Show airs The Immortals, a fitting topic for October 3rd. Then Sunday night, we'll end out the weekend right together with the Fantastic Fun Show. Yes, it returns already, the Spooktober edition, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, Sunday, October 4th. Will CSFL champion remain seated on the throne as the current and capped Fantastic Fun King, or will perhaps somebody else take the throne? Maybe even a Fantastic Fun King Queen. Join us as we end out the weekend right together and find out. Sunday, October 4th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, the Fantastic Fun Show begins. I'm going to head on over to the Backstage VIP Lounge at the rippinrabbithole.com because for many of you, the conversation ends here. But for the Rippin' Rabbits, it's just beginning, where the conversation continues at rippinrabbithole.com. Join us in the Backstage 24/7 VIP Lounge. I'm so glad that you've decided to kick your weekend off right with us here on a Wednesday night. Put a 1 in the chat room if you love weekends that start on Wednesdays. Hey, until we meet again, wherever you are, I'm AJ, the Rippin' Rabbit. Take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.
When glasses clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her? Just illusion, manifestation, or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm